Hello, this is Diego, and this is an overview of the 3SB Credential Program orientation last Thursday. What we first initially did was a meet and greet. We met our cohort leaders, Professor Ginsberg and Professor Stewart. Professor Ginsberg is a professor of the English Methods course, and Professor Stewart is the professor for the Math Methods course. We then created name tents with our name in the front, and this was as a to learn each other's names, and then we used equity cards for later use, to use before pair share activities. Then we talked about the single subject 3SB experience, how it's more flexible and you gain more experience compared to the other programs. And the classes usually take place on the evenings and afternoons 2 times a week for the first semester, and the tutorial also takes place during the first semester. Also, the student teaching takes place later on, when you're more ready for it. Then we we also had a panel of experienced 3SBers, where we were exposed to their experience and advice. We received advice from them for the cohort. Some of the questions that we asked them were, what advice would you tell your older self coming into this program, due to the sufficient amount of work that we will obtain? Another question was, how did you deal with students who backtalk? Another question was, what are some beliefs that changed after your experience with students teaching? And what sources or people did you approach if you had any issues with your guide teacher? We then talked about a growth mindset, and we watched a few videos about it, and we also had to create a Flipgrid about talking about the growth mindset and talking about the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And we talked about, and then we had a pair share activities to talk about the things that we would ensure to be successful, um, and some of the reasons that we want to be the program and be an educator. And we also talked about that these reasons they have to mean to yourself, and they can change over time. They just have to be strong, that you have to believe in them. And I also like this picture that was shown to us during that time. Another pair share activity was discussing about the growth mindset and how would we apply it, coming into the program and to our future students. And we also had to create a Flipgrid about this. Then we had lunch, and the afternoon session started. We talked about the components of the program, courses, student teaching, and the EdTPA and assessment that we will take later on. We then talked about the overview of courses and how it was recommended for students that want to teach history or PE to gain more methods courses to teach it, to put something extra. We then talked about student teaching and how it would be a bit rigorous, and we had a pair share activity about where we had in mind of where we would prefer the tutorial for the first semester and what things we would expect. We also, something that related back to the panel, was that during student teaching, you have to keep in mind that you're a guest during your student teaching, and always communicate efficiently with your guide teacher. Then we talked about the EdTPA, this assessment that we would have to take at the end of the semester. We talked about norms and expectations, how to attend every class, session, be respectful, dress like you're dressing for your future job interview. Then we talked about the handbook. We reviewed the handbook a bit, about the policies and resources such as deadlines and policies, daily attendance, and keeping grades above C. We then talked about student teaching, about our guide teacher, and showing professionalism when we are doing the student teaching, a lot of lesson planning, and being acquainted with the students, learning about them and school community. We also learned to reflect with the guide teacher, communicate with them. You're a guest in their room, and most of all, you're there to learn from them. We then talked about the evaluation of student teaching, these TPEs and observations forms we would have to complete. Then we talked about the ETPA again a bit, about how it's going to be this rigorous assignment, and some tips we received for Save Everything, and it's a bit rigorous, but we can obtain a lot of help from our cohort leaders and a lot of other resources. We then had a demonstration of some of the material that we received was about Screencast-O-Matic and also Flipgrid and Sibme. Thank you.